find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
Big Spike.
Yeah, just a solid line of audio quality.
You know what I gotta start watching again?
What?
Buffy for a Big Spike.
Ah! I did another one with my laugh.
Nice.
That was a good joke, though.
Thank you. You know I enjoy vampire humor.
Yeah, anything to bring David Boreanaz into the conversation.
You know, I'm out here fly fishing for David Boreanaz. I always want to reel him in.
I mean, I know you said Spike and they're mortal enemies in the show, but I know what you were thinking.
You know who I was really thinking of.
I'm on my, third or fourth watch of Bones right now. I just, don't even know how to stop watching it.
It's always in my rotation. Bones never leaves my heart or my queue.
No.
In olden days, a glimpse of femur was only for morbid dreamers, but you're not alone. Bring anything bones. Two goofy gals with deathly interest go on a skeleton inquest in your headphones. Anything bones.
Hello and welcome to Anything Bones. I'm Sophie. I'll see you again, Schwartz.
And I'm Katelyn. I hate these white people heart.
Again, I ask, generally or specific to your story?
Specific to the story, but can also be just at any point in my life.
Any point in your life, any point in history.
Particularly in the early times.
The early times.
But it continues. I hope everybody in Washington got out and voted, because we just had an election day.
We certainly did, and I live right by the ballot box and got my ballot in, a little while ago, and totally forgot about the election day. And so driving back to my apartment was not a fun, sexy time. There was a line of people with their fucking hazards on taking up the entire street. I was like, this is a street, not a parking lot, you maniacs.
Yeah,
and they all walk away super self-satisfied. They're like, look at me. I exercise my democratic right. Now I'm gonna get in my car and take 15 fucking minutes to drive away.
I like the exercising of the right, not the attitude behind it.
No, I love voting. I just don't like the smug 20 minutes of car sitting.
Yeah, it's like, I just want to go home. Let me go home.
Let me exercise my right to be home.
Cat update. My cat's name is Minnie. I don't think I had a name for her the last time we recorded. And if you hear a little meow in this recording, it's because she's in the same room with me. So deal with it.
We're finally, like almost all other podcasts, we got a cat on the track.
Yeah. And she is creepy. No.
She is a little creeper. I went to check on her while Katelyn was away for part of the weekend, and she came barreling out from the darkness of Katelyn's room and maybe scared me a little bit.
Well, she's so quiet too. I accidentally rolled over on her because she was right at my back. And unfortunately, that was the last time she slept in my bed for more than a few minutes. Yeah, I don't know. Currently, she's playing with a ball on a string, so good times all around for Minnie.
Oh, if life could be that simple.
I know. Oh my god, I think this isn't as funny as I thought it was in the moment, but I'm going to tell the story anyway. Last night, I started singing to Minnie, Chiquitita, tell me what's wrong. And she, without missing a beat, goes, meow.
Oh, I wish you got that on video.
I do too. It was so fucking weird and funny. And I was like, is this cat a comedian?
I think she is. She's a vocal little girl. She loves mewing and letting you know what she thinks of you being in the bathroom, which is her space.
Yeah. She has moved out of the bathroom. All of her bits of, like, her litter box and her toys and stuff are all out in the living room now. The only thing left is the glass of water that's just hers there permanently, because I can't leave water glasses out for myself anymore.
No, those days are over, unfortunately.
Anyway, that's Katelyn's Cat Corner with Minnie.
Aw, I hope it's a recurring segment.
Yeah, I think it will be. I need to figure out what she's going to be for Halloween, because somebody at work reminded me that, like, I need to get her a Halloween costume. So hopefully I can start, like, easing her into getting dressed up.
Oh my god. Yeah, you gotta videotape the first time you try to put clothes on that cat.
Yeah, I mean, she's so small. I can kind of just make it happen, I feel like, but not against her will too much.
No, but I feel like she would look very cute as, like, a little witch or a little pumpkin because she's orange.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless, and pictures will be coming to the Anything Bones feed.
Hell yeah, we should at least get a picture for this post for Katelyn's Cat Corner.
Yeah, perfect. All right, should I transition from cats to murder?
Yes, please.
Can anyone do that seamlessly? Yes, listen to this.
I'm 100% ears.
I'm going to take us back to the mid-1800s, where a little thing called Manifest Destiny was going around.
Ugh,
ever heard of it?
A terrible disease.
So I'm going to be talking about the Whitman Massacre. And this is a part of Washington State's history that I didn't super know about, but connects to a lot of things I did learn about as an Oregonian, learning about the Oregon Trail.
Yeah, I don't know what you're about to talk about. I'm an uneducated Californian.
Sorry, Minnie smacked something. I have lived in the Pacific Northwest my whole life, and I stumbled across this when I was trying to find something, like, haunted to cover. And there was just, like, one little blip on a website that was like, this Whitman Massacre historical site is pretty haunted and people have heard, like, horses' hooves there. And I was like,
ooh,
that's interesting, but I need more. And that was the only source that said it was haunted. So I think once you hear this story, you will agree that the energy gives off a real haunted vibe. I wouldn't be surprised if there were ghosts there, but cannot confirm or deny.
That's so funny that you were also looking for something haunted, because I spent a long time looking for something haunted too, and even ended up screaming "haunted tombs" at my computer.
Like into a search engine, or like you physically shouted at it?
I was searching different combinations of, like, key search terms and getting really frustrated because we've done a lot of them. So,
yeah,
like,
damn it.
Yeah, so I just ended up, like, screaming at my computer, "Siri, haunted tombs!"
Yeah, so I started with the haunted blip and then was like, what is this? And decided to learn about the Whitman Massacre. And I did that with a few different sources. HistoryLink.org, OregonEncyclopedia.org, Crosscut.com, LegendsOfAmerica.com, Wikipedia, obviously, and then an episode of the Most Notorious podcast. It was episode 249, and I'm going to link that in the show notes, because I'm not going, like, fully into this. It's as much as I could, like, wrap this up in, like, 15-20 minutes. So if you really are interested in this, I highly recommend this podcast episode, because the guy that's being interviewed in it, like, literally wrote the book on this. All right, so Manifest Destiny. What are we doing? We're in the 13 colonies, and we're like, I need more.
These 13 colonies are not enough. What if there was more land for us to take? Because
exactly.
we're white and we deserve it.
You're already smelling what I'm stepping in? Is that the expression?
Yes, and it is foul.
Yeah. So at this point in time, we're in the early 1800s, and like Lewis and Clark go out and do their thing and find the Pacific Ocean. Hooray, we did it.
They find the Pacific Ocean.
No, I mean, you know what I mean.
I know, but just imagine them being like, whoa, what the fuck is that?
They're like the first white people.
Yes.
I mean, they know it's, they don't find it. You know what I mean. They find the path to it.
They fancy themselves to have found it.
Yeah. This is not the story of Lewis and Clark, though, because I'm just like pulling on memories, because our story kind of starts in like the 1820s, so a little bit after Lewis and Clark do their thing. So this is, around this time, there are lots of explorers and traders that are going to what they call the Oregon Territory. And at this point, there's also a lot of Native Americans there. And this interdenominational American Board of Commissioners for Foreign Missions was like, let's go convert some people. Missions meaning we're missionaries. Like, we're going to go to your town and turn you to Christianity. Let's love God together.
Yeah, when you first said it, I didn't quite put that together. I thought it was some sort of tactical military thing, but as soon as you said missions, like, I was like, like missionaries. Oh, we're spreading Christ.
Sure. So, in 1836, a guy named Dr. Marcus Whitman sets out on a party with his bride, Narcissa, Reverend Henry Spalding, his wife, Eliza, and a mechanic carpenter whose name is William Gray. So they're part of this group of missionaries, and they're about to go to Fort Washington and fuck shit up. Sorry. They really are.
I mean, but, in no uncertain terms, I bet they're going to.
One of my sources said that these two women were the first American women to travel across the continent of North America, which I think is cool. But a lot of women that weren't American also did that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I would say maybe the first European women to cross the North American continent.
So they get to an area by the Walla Walla River, which is on Cayuse land, and they established their Protestant mission there. So, like I said, it's by the Walla Walla River at Waiilatpu, and I'm so sorry if I'm saying that wrong. They did spell it out phonetically, so I hope it's close. And that means place of the ryegrass. Delicious.
Yeah.
So their mission is being sponsored by this board of commissioners of foreign missions, and they set up camp with these Cayuse people who initially are very welcoming to this little group of missionaries. They allegedly helped them plant crops and build structures, and they helped supplement their diet with horse meat until they got their shit together and were able to raise their own animals and make their own food and stuff.
That sounds super kind of them. I bet they repay them super well.
Yeah, you guessed it. So the Whitmans are dispensing, quote, farming and medical advice while preaching to local Indians.
I love how they're giving farming advice as the indigenous people rolled up and being like, hey, these are what crops work here. They're like, let me tell you about farming.
Hysterical, right? But really they were there to preach to them and try to convert them to Christianity, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. That's priority number one.
Yes.
Also, their medical advice, I bet, was dick. We were not doing great medicine back then either.
No. I mean, technically he was a doctor.
But what does that mean in 1820?
It doesn't mean a ton.
That means dick in 1820.
It doesn't mean a super ton.
I could roll up to 1820 and be like, I am a doctor. And everyone would be like, cool, awesome. There aren't any standards for that.
the Whitmans have a child in 1837, and they name her Alice Clarissa. And apparently she is like the talk of the town, and everybody comes to visit the baby, and they call her the Cayuse girl because she was born on the land. So they're like, they love this little baby, and I think it helped the relationship with the Whitmans because they loved this baby so much.
I mean, yeah, it's a whole new person in a town of probably less than 20 people, so it's probably pretty exciting.
Yeah. And unfortunately, that, like, bond with the baby wasn't enough to, like, keep this relationship strong. Hold on, my fan turned on by a ghost.
Ah, the fucking fan ghost.
Oh, good job.
Did she do something cute?
She used to be scared of it.
Aww. But, so you were saying that the relationship with the baby, you were saying a cute baby does not solve all problems?
Nah. No. So the Whitmans were, like, pretty sure that they would arrive. It's doing it again. I'll just turn the light off, I guess.
Okay. We'll talk about this in the dark, have it be extra spooky.
It's the Whitmans.
Yeah!
They don't want me to tell their story.
Well, fuck you guys.
Okay. The Marcus and Narcissa Whitman had come to the Oregon Territory bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, thinking, oh, we're just gonna go and, like, live among the native people. They called them Indians, obviously.
Great.
We're gonna convert them to Christianity, and as soon as we're done with them, like, they're living like perfect little white people just like us, and they're gonna love God and go to heaven, and we're all gonna have a great time.
Ugh, that sounds awful.
So the Native Americans were actually interested in some aspects of the culture and, like, the things that they were bringing. The religion was also somewhat interesting to them, but they didn't want it to replace their existing ideologies. They wanted it to be a supplement to what they already kind of had.
I mean, that's a fairly nice compromise. People usually don't take too well to people rolling up into their territory and being like, hi, your religion's trash. Here's our religion.
Here's
like,
the right
that
way.
Yeah, that usually doesn't go so well. So, like, honestly, these people are being very generous with them.
Yeah, exactly. It might have been okay if things didn't escalate. Anyway, the baby unfortunately drowned in the river when she was 2 years old.
No.
The podcast I listened to said that the Whitman, like, the parents were reading when this happened. But I don't know how anybody would, like, know that, but sure.
Some people write weird shit down in their journals, but I mean, also to that point, people write weird shit down in their journals.
Yeah,
so,
who knows? That was the only source that said that, but anyway. So, of course, Narcissa was very depressed and kind of never really recovered from this. And I guess, I don't know if it was because his daughter died or because of just who he was and what he wanted to do. Basically, Marcus Whitman started to focus a little bit less on converting Native Americans and more on bringing white people all the way over here so that they could all have a little colony of white people over here. At this point, the Oregon country that they were living in wasn't technically part of the United States, but that boundary dispute was going to get cleared up with Great Britain in this source at 1846. Anyway, going back a little bit, that's just kind of an aside. If you're interested in the law and boundaries, I guess. Like literal boundaries, not emotional.
I was going to say, I love emotional boundaries.
So there is a story about the board of the the head missionary people. Apparently in 1842 were like, we're going to close the Whitman site. Like, it's just not really working for us. We're going to move some shit around. And apparently Marcus Whitman got this message, months later and was like, holy shit, this will not stand. And so he fucking rode a horse across the country And
What?
yeah, went into Boston and was like, you will not do this. Like, you can't do this. This is a really important, like, place. This is going to be like a place where people will get supplies on their way to the Oregon country. And also, you know, just a quick sidebar, if we abandon the site, then the Catholics are going to take it over, and we can't have that.
I would like to think that when he was riding across the country, he tried to stay mad the whole time. He tried to, like, keep that energy so that when he got to Boston, he could be, like, fresh. He could, like, get off the horse and be like, guys, what the fuck?
I like to imagine that he just never stopped riding. He didn't stop to eat, go to the bathroom, nothing.
No. He was riding piss pants and fire whip snap angry across the country.
I am skeptical that this thing even happened, but anyway, apparently he returns in 1843, and he's brought like 800 white people with him. And then over the next few years, by the time we get to 1847, there are like thousands of settlers coming into the Oregon country, which is the Oregon Trail. At the same time as all these people are just coming in, you know, one after the other, like, here's a wagon, there's a wagon, ox, donkey, baby, everybody. We're all taking a wagon to Oregon. Just a quick thing, I feel like I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I had to pretend to be on the Oregon Trail in one of my classes as a kid.
God, yes.
And, like, we had to be strategic about it, and I feel like we would get, like, prompts. I don't remember exactly how it went down, but we would have to, like, decide as as a family unit, like, what we were going to do at different junctures, and it was very weird.
I mean, that sounds like a very creative way to learn about it.
It was, yeah, but I mean, in doing research for this, I was like, okay, so I was, quote unquote, on the Oregon Trail, and I was learning about the Oregon Trail, and it was all from the perspective of the white people traveling in the wagons going to Oregon. And the Native Americans were these violent attackers that would, you know, trip up your journey to Oregon. And that's not correct. Like, all of these people were just, like, going into their land where they had lived for years and years and just were like, this is mine now, goodbye.
Yeah, I think, like...
Why don't you like me? Like,
why don't you like me and my violent, condescending attitude? Why don't you like that I'm stealing your shit? That's very interesting, though. I think that's, like, you know, that's, like, a decolonizing, like, attitude, I feel like. To be like, hey, like, my education was one way, but, like, the real thing was, you know, the people in the wagons were the primary danger.
Exactly, yeah. It was always from their perspective and, like, what they were going through. And the Native Americans were just, like, side characters and villains. While all these people are coming in, there is also an epidemic of measles sweeping across the Cayuse people, and they have no natural immunity to measles, but some of the Euro-Americans did have some natural immunity. Obviously, we don't have any vaccines at this point, but having been exposed to it before, or, like, it was not affecting the white people as much as the Native people. It was so much so that the people started to take notice that Dr. Whitman's white patients would most of the time recover from their measles, while his Native American patients didn't seem to make it very much. Not saying that he did something wrong, but, like, some people might say he did something wrong. We don't know.
Well, I mean, what he did, you know, as a doctor, we have no idea, but what we can tell for sure is that their presence exposed these people to a disease they had no immunity for, and that obviously had a deadly cost.
Yeah, and some of the Native people were, like, suspecting that he was doing this on purpose to take their land, which, who knows?
I wouldn't put it past him.
Yeah, I don't think that their, like, genetic warfare was as sophisticated as ours is now.
Yeah.
But still, it's not good. So Dr. Whitman is treating patients at the mission, And he finds out through his time there, because they've been there like 10, 11 years at this point. It turns out in Cayu's culture, a healer whose patients died could be considered like guilty of murder, or basically like overstepping with his powers, and he could be condemned to death.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting, and some of my sources said that he would have like definitely known this. Some people, or I mean, some sources don't really mention this, but seems like it sounds like there were some instances where he was pretty nervous about treating certain members of the community because, like, he didn't want to be killed if they died on his table. You know what I mean?
For sure, I guess, but, you know, you are a doctor. I know there's no Hippocratic Oath now, you know, at this time, but...
So this takes us to November 29th, 1847. A bunch of men with hatchets and guns, concealed under blankets or like under their clothes, most likely. They visited Dr. Whitman, pretending to need medical care. And in the end, 60 Cayuse and Umatilla people killed both of the Whitmans and like 11 or 12 other people. And then they took 53 people hostage.
Whoa.
And this was not like, it was a massacre, as the name suggests. So they were using tomahawks, which allegedly, quote, released evil spirits dwelling within the whites. Kind of makes sense, honestly.
I mean, if they were running around spreading this deadly disease, you know, it would be easy to think that they had evil spirits in them.
Yeah, and they don't know what disease is. Nobody really knew. So all they know is that people are getting sick and dying, and it's not really happening to the white people as much. So, and also there are just so many of them there, and there were good relations at the beginning, you'll remember, but the more and more people come, there's just their culture, their space is getting pushed further and further out, and obviously that wouldn't work for anybody.
Yeah.
So it's not a surprise that things ended like this. So the survivors, the hostages, which were mostly women and children, were held hostage for a month, and then they were set free. Somebody from the Hudson's Bay company like paid the ransom for them. And that was that for a bit. People are really pissed off at this point about this massacre because it's not happening on federal land. There's no protections for them. They're just kind of out in the wild, quote unquote, with the Indians. So in 1848, kind of spurred on by this massacre, they bring legislation to Washington, D.C., because they want to make Oregon have territorial status, which means that it will be the same as one of the colonies. And Congress grants it. I guess that was already kind of in the works, but it was held up because they weren't sure whether slavery was going to be legal or not.
That's always the big question.
Nice one, guys. They said no to slavery, which I'm surprised.
I mean, but thank God.
Yeah. Oregon has a really disgusting racist history. I'm not even going to get into it right now. I mean, I'm kind of getting into it, but this is really old. But yeah, it's a pretty whitewashed place in a lot of neighborhoods. Back to my story. So Oregon is granted territory. It's the first one west of the Rocky Mountains. But with all this like new power and new what's the word? Law and order, authority. Basically. Yeah, authority, exactly. With this new authority, the people in Oregon were like, well, we cannot stand by and let the Indians that killed the Whitmans and their mission people go free. Like, this has to be avenged. So there was a meeting in April 1849 where peace was offered to the Native Americans if they gave up the men that killed the Whitmans. That's their one option. The other option is just a war.
Great, we love that.
I guess they held out for another year, but then they couldn't hold out any longer. And the chief, his name was Tauto. I hope I'm saying that correctly. He arranged for a surrender of the 5 men. They probably weren't the only men that were involved in this, but they were surrendered and they were brought to Oregon City, which is now a suburb outside of Portland, where they were tried, quote unquote. Like, there was no way they were going to be found innocent. Obviously, they were convicted and sentenced to death by hanging. And in the podcast, it seemed like they thought that they were dying to save their people from this war, which ended up happening anyway. So, really shitty. And of course, we all know how the rest of the story plays out with Native American people being fully pushed out of their lands and put onto reservations. Now, moving up to 2021, this is very recent. An author named Blaine Harden published a book called Murder at the Mission, and his sole focus on this book was to, quote, explore how the Whitman Massacre myth was created by an erratic, self-promoting Henry Harmon Spalding who avoided the massacre. Scandalous. So Spalding was one of the guys that was on the initial mission trip, when they first came from the East Coast to the West Coast. And he was apparently a dick, but he managed to persuade the Senate to print an official pamphlet in the 1870s about Whitman and all of his various accolades as, like, the protector of the Oregon Territory, basically. This is where that story about him riding a horse across the country comes from. This fucking pamphlet.
So, that sounds like it's gotta be apocryphal then. Although, riding a horse across the country, like, as we've said, hopefully in one go, hopefully in just like a couple
never
of
stopping.
days of just like really angry piss pants riding, yeah.
Across the entire continent.
Well, I'm not sure how long it'd even take you to ride a horse if you the horse has gotta stop. The horse is not as mad unless you piss the horse off, too.
Yeah. So, this is so ridiculous. These myths about Whitman were actually debunked all the way back in 1901.
That's nuts.
But it didn't matter, because in 1953, when Washington State needed to send a statue to the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C., to exemplify the best of the best in Washington State, they sent a fucking statue of Dr. Marcus Whitman.
Boo.
So this was in 1953, and this motherfucker stood in the, what's it called? It's in the Capitol. I'm totally spacing. The Statuary Hall in the U.S. Capitol. He stood there for a really long time until this 2021. It was changed to be Billy Frank Jr., who was a tribal treaty activist.
Well, that sounds much better.
Thank God. But yeah, I can't understand they debunked this shit in 1901, and they were so convinced that Dr. Whitman was this religious, godly martyr who died so that Oregon could exist. And they're like, this is the cream of the crop for us. And but most of the shit he did was just by happenstance. Like, he wasn't this, like, grand dude, with a great plan. He just wanted to take land away from Native people and give it to white people.
Does not sound like an exemplary dude to me.
No. So, like I said, his statue, gone. You might have recognized the name Whitman from the college that is in Walla Walla, Washington. They used to call their athletes the missionaries. Don't do that anymore.
Yeah, don't do that anymore for many reasons.
There are other statues of Whitman that are kind of slowly being removed. They're not even really calling it the Whitman Massacre anymore. They're calling it the tragedy at Waiilatpu. And the really great thing that Whitman College did was they announced a scholarship program for 5 students from the Umatilla Reservation where the Cayuse tribe lives.
That's a good start.
That's something. But yeah, so that is the historically inaccurate, fucked up, multi-layered story of the Whitman Massacre.
Wow, that was really fascinating. I had never heard of that before.
No, and I have a feeling native Washingtonians will have heard about this, sort of like I heard about the Donner Party and the Oregon Trail and shit like that.
Yeah, and it's just a fascinating story because I feel like it's extremely multifaceted. There are a lot of like perspectives to consider, like when you look at like what happened and like why it happened and like how these tensions rose to violence.
Yep.
Because like kind of a little bit like how we talked about your story last week, you know, sometimes situations can push you to violence and violence isn't okay and we do not condone it in any like circumstance. But it's interesting how, you know, out in these territories where, you know, it was just like you said, just the, you know, colonizers and then the native people and no one to like broker any peace between them other than each other. Like, you know, it's not surprising that things got really, really tragic and terrible.
Yeah, and caused a lot of suffering for native people. Unfortunately, the suffering of the white people kind of like drowned out the tragedy of the tribes at that time. There's people doing the work to recognize that today. But yeah, that was that. I hope that was okay for you to hear, listener. And let's take a little break, have a cookie or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw out this Whitman sampler.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Molly.
And I'm Abigail,
We're sisters.
and we believe in ghosts.
Welcome to Supernatural Sisters, a podcast all about ghostly encounters, bone-chilling monsters, and basically anything that goes bump in the night. Each week, we talk about a haunted place, a legendary monster, or a story that sends shivers down our spines. And maybe we'll talk about the pottery scene from Ghost.
He's not a ghost in that scene. There are other parts of that movie where he's a ghost.
Subscribe wherever you get podcasts.
And remember, we
believe
believe you.
1 chocolate in the trash, 2 chocolates in the trash, 3 chocolates in the trash, 4 chocolates in the trash. It was a very small Whitman sampler.
Yeah, fuck that caramel.
Yeah, go die in a hole. Alright, so now for something way more joyous.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for uplifting me now.
Yeah! I was looking for a topic, and I love hearing about death rituals from all around the world, because I feel like in at least our like Western, Eurocentric, American view of death is very specific and very sterilized and very hands-off. We kind of hand our dead, as soon as someone passes away, we kind of hand our dead away to professionals to, you know, get the person presentable to, you know, either see them again before they're buried / cremated, or to, you know, take the body and make it something more pleasant for us to like receive. So I always find cultures that do not adhere to this and have a completely different view of death fascinating and refreshing and like enlightening. So this is death culture of the Torajans in South Sulawesi, Indonesia.
Okay, cool.
I'll do my sources real quick before we get headfirst into this amazing ritual. I have an article from Vice, one from New York Times, one from All That's Interesting, and one from Sunday Morning Herald. And I'd also like to add From Here to Eternity by Katelyn, because that's where I first heard about this. Because I read that book a couple of years ago. It's fascinating. If you love death rituals from around the world like I do, and you don't want to wait for me to cover them all, go grab yourself this book because it's fantastic. All right. what is this ritual that I'm talking about? Because I have not gotten into it at all.
No, I'm going in blind.
You're going in blind. So basically, the Torajans have a very different view of death than us. From a very young age, they learn to kind of like accept it as more of an impermanent transitional state than something like a permanent end, the way that like we do in like Western American Eurocentric death culture. So when someone dies in Torajan culture, they at first, before their funeral, they're considered just sick. Their culture believes that the spirit of the dead person lingers around in the world before their funeral. So what they do is that they keep the body of the deceased person, who, like I said, they consider just sick. They just keep them in their house and continue to care for them. They like bring them food, they bring them cigarettes if they smoke, they keep them clean and dressed, and all of this is kind of in preparation for their funeral rites, which can be extremely expensive.
Hell yeah.
So the body of a deceased loved one can hang out in a Torajan house for anywhere between a couple of months to a couple of decades.
No?
Yes.
Are they... Okay. How do you deal with the smell?
Well, there's a lot of preserving going on. There's a lot of formaldehyde and formalin and some other kind of like more secretive like preserving techniques. But they use a lot of like dried herbs and stuff to just like keep the smell not, a problem.
Okay.
But honestly, like we can go through some pictures if you want, but like they basically become like very clean mummies because they're just like looked after every single day
By the family.
Yeah.
Huh.
In the home.
Yeah, that's very different.
Yeah, super different. Really takes death and like keeps it in front of your face rather than like how we do of just kind of banishing it off to someone like professional.
Right. Yeah, and you just have, at this point you have pictures or videos or whatever, but most people don't have the body unless it's in cremated form.
Yeah, but I think, family is extremely important in this culture, and I think like, that extends beyond death. As it does for us, but like, translated in a different,
it's
way.
literal.
Yeah. So, like I said, the funeral is kind of marks the like passing on of like the soul in Torajan like culture. And it's also, the funeral is also a pretty big like status symbol. So like, the bigger your funeral is, the more important of a person you were, and kind of ups your status in the community for your living family members as well. And so like I said, hinted at earlier, these funerals can be incredibly expensive, and people even go into debt putting on these funerals because like it's an event that involves the entire village, and it can take anywhere from like a couple of days to a couple of weeks.
Sure. Clear my schedule.
Yeah. You got funeral shit to do, because I'll let you know some of the fun activities we're going to be doing if we go to this funeral. There's going to be praying, there's going to be dancing, there's going to be singing, there's going to be sacrifice of a water buffalo, and maybe some cockfights later.
Okay, wow. Is there any food?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I'm in.
Big time. Yeah. So the costs of these funerals, even if we're looking at like someone who is like seen as like lower status or who, has a lower income in this society, a funeral for them could cost as much as $50,000.
Whoa. That's a lot. I mean, I can never remember what the average like American funeral costs, but it seems like it would be less than that.
Future Sophie popping in here to say that the average American funeral is usually between $5,000 to $9,000. Yeah, funerals get pretty costly, but I would say that's probably a little bit more than the average American funeral.
That's pretty steep. That's like a nice car.
Yeah, and I mean, they can go up to like $500,000.
Whoa.
Like, this is, people aren't joking around. This is incredibly important. And, close relatives are expected to bring gifts, especially an expensive sacrificial water buffalo. If you show up without a water buffalo, it's rude as fuck.
Okay, I'm sorry. Is the water buffalo just a buffalo?
It's a different type of buffalo. It's not like the fuzzy American buffalo.
But it is big?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I was like, is it the size of, like, a lizard? What are we talking about? It's a buffalo.
Very big cow.
Okay, sure.
And, to the point of these water buffaloes, they're not cheap either.
I don't think so.
No, because they can be between $10,000 and $40,000 for a water buffalo.
Jesus Christ.
That's the same as, like, some houses there.
Yeah, fuck.
And, just a little tidbit about the water buffalo. The pricing depends on the exclusivity of the skin. That's not my phrasing. The length of the horns and the color of the buffalo's eyes.
I don't understand the thing about the skin. I've racked my brain. I don't understand.
The skin is very exclusive.
Oh, okay.
You're the skin person.
But I would assume that, like, there's fur on a water buffalo.
Let me get you a picture of this animal.
I need to see it to believe it.
And if you think this is a useless tangent, it isn't. Images of a water buffalo. Hey, guy. He's so cute. I'm not too big on animal sacrifices, to be honest. Although, I did just send a picture of a water buffalo to Jackie in Odessa.
Whoops. Hope you like it, guys.
That's okay. They'll love it. Everybody's gonna love this guy. He's adorable.
Oh, yeah, that's just a big cow.
Yeah!
I don't know why I was second guessing that a water buffalo wouldn't be like a buffalo. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Our buffalo look a lot different than their buffalo, but they're both
water.
big cows.
The water threw me. I was like, does it swim? Like, what's going on?
Oh, what is that?
I'm sorry.
Manatee?
It's been a long day. I don't know what's going on with me.
All right. So, continuing on the water buffalo river, traveling down that, the reason that the buffalo are so important. So, when they sacrifice the buffalo, the last breath of the buffalo is known as the Ramu Solo, which is like, that marks the official death of the deceased person. And those water buffalo then escort this person, like, into the afterlife, into, like, puja, which is like heaven. So, buffalo's very important. I'm glad we cleared them up.
Yeah, thank you. Big horns.
Yeah, big horns. So the more buffalo that you sacrifice at your funeral, the wealthier your family is, obviously, and the faster your soul is going to get on into heaven.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. And without water buffalo, you're not going to find your way there. Don't even fucking try.
Where do you go if you can't afford a water buffalo?
Your shit's lost. This is why they keep the person in the house for so long, because you're saving for stuff like the water buffalo.
Holy shit. So
okay.
Wow. Okay.
So it like actually makes sense. So, like, I have a question. How many water buffalo do you think is the ideal number of water buffalo? Because there is a right answer.
3.
Nope.
More or less.
Oh, more.
10.
More.
100.
Less.
50.
It's 24.
Okay. Jesus. That's... Even... Why do you need that many water buffalo to take you to heaven? I mean, that's... They must
treacherous journey.
They must just be producing these water buffalo, like, everywhere. There need to be an endless supply of water buffalo.
Well, I mean, I think it's all worked out in, like, the lengthiness of this ritual, you know? This is something that takes, you know, from months to years to orchestrate.
Okay.
So you've got time to source your buffalo. And, you know, 24 water buffalo is from, like, some ancient teachings, but there may be, you know, the ideal number can change depending on how important you are. So that's just my disclaimer. So, like I said before, it's polite to, if you're an important guest or a guest close to the deceased, it's important to bring a water buffalo. And it's kind of an unwritten, like, unspoken rule that if, like, I come to your auntie's funeral with a water buffalo, you're gonna come to my auntie's funeral with a water buffalo.
Oh, okay. Everybody's trading buffaloes.
Well, they're keeping the buffalo coming. You know.
Well, yeah, it's kind of, it's like you can't buy your own buffalo.
I mean, you should have your own buffalo, but you should get way more on the day.
Okay, sure. You should be able to afford your own buffalo, but you should have been so good in life that people want to trade buffalo with your family members.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. And of course, like, before the sacrifice of the water buffaloes, we got to watch a couple of them fight.
Oh, do we?
I know. Yeah. I mean, they just knock horns.
Yeah.
So after the water buffalo have been sacrificed, I will say that their heads are removed and lined up, and then the meat is divided up and given out to the family. So these buffalo are multi-purposed. They are like spiritual guides, but they are also dinner.
Yeah, good. They should be utilized. I mean, I eat meat, so it's like I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't say that this is horrifying to me.
No, and and this is a big feast that's held to honor the dead afterwards.
Yeah.
So when you said, is there food? Fuck
yes.
Yeah, there's food. And the thing is that, like, this ritual is, like, open for tourists. Like, they want people to come to these giant funerals because it actually ups the status of the family, how many people are, like, attending your funeral.
Got it. Cool.
So on the final day of the funeral, because this is a multi-day event, the body is taken to what's going to be its final resting place, which is usually a tomb that's carved into the side of a cliff or a funeral tower.
I'd like to know what the tower entails.
It just looks like stone tower monuments.
And is it bodies stacked on top of each other inside?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the arrangement on the inside is.
I wonder if it's like one body per tower, because that's a lot of towers.
I can show you. Let me try to show you a picture of the cliffs. So I sent you a picture of what the cliffside tombs look like.
Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Right?
Super cool.
So, like, a beautiful place.
Oh my god, are those just bodies kind of standing next to each other?
Oh, are you on the article now?
No, I just zoomed into this picture.
Yes, probably.
Oh my god, they're not in coffins. They're just looking at you.
No. I'll explain that in a minute. I'll explain that in a minute. I actually know what that is. Okay, we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so these tombs that are on the sides of cliffs, which the picture will be on the Instagram post if you want to go take a look at it for yourself. These tombs can be as high as 100 feet off of the ground, and kind of like our water buffalo, the higher up you are, the more status that you have. Death is a lot about status, I feel like, in this culture. There's a lot of, but you can say that about, like, every culture, like big grand funerals reflect status. I thought this was very interesting, but when children die in the community, if they pass away as babies, they are actually placed in a hollowed out portion of, like, a living tree and then, like, enclosed into the tree.
Aww.
And they believe that the tree will, like, reabsorb the child, the, like, spirit of the child, like, as it grows.
Really sweet and sad.
Yeah, right. But I thought I'd just mention that because it's part of, like, these really cool burial practices that they've got going on. So what you were looking at was the last key element of this, long, protracted funeral, which are wooden or bamboo effigies of the deceased. And these can be extremely expensive too and are intricately done. And they are kept, like, opposite either opposite or, like, underneath the tombs of the people to, like, watch over their tombs. And sometimes if they're really expensive and really nice, the families are afraid they get stolen, and so they take them home with them.
Okay, yeah, fair. I mean, the image that I just zoomed in and saw, I was like, those are standing up mummies next to each other. Like, it's very creepy.
I may try to wrangle some pictures for the Instagram post later, but like, if you look up these effigies, some of them are extremely accurate and look like, you know, just a person sitting there, and some of them are a little wonky. No disrespect. No disrespect.
Well, some of them probably have been there for a long time, too, and have just been out. It seems like they're just they're sheltered on the cliff, but they're still exposed to elements, so.
Yeah, exactly. They get weathered.
Yeah.
So, this is the end of the funeral, but this is not the end of their relationship with the dead.
Okay, lay it on me.
Because, bitch, it's August. It's time for the death ritual known as Manene, which is where they go to the tombs where these people are entombed, take them back out, clean them up, take pictures with them, and like have a little festival, and then put them back.
Oh my god, they come home for a little bit.
They do!
Not the effigies, the actual bodies.
The actual factual bodies.
Wow. I mean, wow. I just would never have, that's not, we haven't covered anything like that before.
No, and I mean, it's really kind of thoughtful because, like I said, this ritual is performed like between, you know, every 1 to every like 3 years. And like I said, it happens in August, so it may or may not be happening now. But like, happy Manene to everybody. And so like, people don't really, there's no solid historical like date when people started doing this, like most death rituals. But there's, you know, like a legend that says that there was a hunter named Pong Ramsalek who a couple of 100 years ago was walking around the forest and he found an abandoned corpse. And he was just like, I feel for this guy. So he took care of the dead body, dressed it up in his clothes, and then from then on, he was kind of endowed with a lot of good fortune and plentiful harvests. So people were like, hey, maybe we should respect the dead more. Because this ritual also is, you know, it's not only to respect the dead and to see your loved ones again, but it's also to boost the harvest.
Yeah, cool.
It's all about the harvest.
All good things, man.
All good things. But this, you know, like we were saying, this provides a chance for the Toraja to see their loved ones again and also to check and see how their body's holding up. And if you're well preserved, that's a sign of a good blessing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like with the saints.
Uh-huh, yep.
And it also gives them an opportunity to connect, you know, between the generations. Like if you never knew your great grandma, you might get to like meet her in a way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Oh, that's kind of lovely.
Yeah, and, you know, kind of like when they first died, they take care of the person. Like I said, they wash them. They give them a little smoke. There was one article that I read of this guy that I'm going to quote. His name is Bartolomeus Bunga, and he was hanging out with his mom. He took her on a scooter ride, which is, like, so sweet. And I would just like to, like, share his quote. He says, quote, "Doing manene is my way of repaying my mother's love. I'm carrying my mother just like she carried me when I was a baby."
Oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah, and he kind of goes on to say, quote, "It's like when you come home for Christmas. It's that feeling of joy, meeting someone you haven't seen for a long time. A lot of people will consider a graveyard a scary place. Here it's just like your parents' home. There is no feeling of being scared."
Oh, well, that's always good.
Yeah, so I just thought that this idea of death was so special because, like I said at the beginning of my story, death is so sanitized in our particular culture. We, you know, may get to I talked about, I think on last week's episode, you know, I had a viewing of my deceased grandmother, but I had not come in contact with a dead body before that. So I think it's a very interesting way of dealing with the dead. I'm trying to grab some more pictures for you. Oh, here's a good one.
Yeah, if you had no idea what was going on in this picture, you would probably be scared. But hearing all the context and everything, I think it's really sweet.
Yeah, I sent Katelyn a picture of a bunch of family members hanging out with their deceased loved one. They've got him stood up. And then I think I just sent you another one.
Yeah. This one looks like the person is in a tomb. But somebody's wearing a mask, so I wonder if this is pretty current.
Maybe. There were a lot of concerns around the pandemic and like doing this ritual.
Mm-hmm.
And some people, I read in one article that like some people were deciding not to do it during the pandemic and some people were going ahead to do it anyway. Not that the bodies themselves are like dangerous in any fashion, but like the gathering of people, because like there's these huge parties.
Yeah. We couldn't, I think at the beginning there weren't, you couldn't have funerals and you couldn't have weddings and stuff at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, so it's just like any other large cultural gathering.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought when we look at different, I feel like you can tell a lot about a culture by like how they treat their dead. So like, looking at this culture and their like generosity and longevity of like love for their family members, like, I think from a Western perspective, like you said, you could just look at that picture and be like, fuck, is that a dead body?
Yeah, like what the fuck is going on here? But if you know the context, it's like, oh, they're visiting Grandpa.
Yeah, they're having a visit with Grandpa.
Yeah, that was really interesting, Soph. Well done.
Thank you. I would say I feel neglectful having not done it already.
Well, better late than never.
Exactly.
And I don't think it was late. What are we? 85, 84 now? I don't know. 84, I think.
We're 84!
Yeah, we're the ripe age of 84 episodes. Anyway, take some time this week to just marvel at how cool your bones are. Just flex your biceps really hard and go, yes!
I like to think about my spine and how it's like a column through my body that holds all my bones together.
Love that. Love that for you and I. Okay, everyone, have a good week. We'll see you later. Bon voyage.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Anything Bones. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Anything Bones Podcast, or email us at anythingbonespodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you to Nick Kruger for our spooky music and Stephen Vetteroff
At Chubby Scrubby on Twitter.
for our jazzy vocals, and thank you to Camilla Franklin
At Camilla Strader on Instagram.
for our beautiful bony artwork. Please rate, review, and subscribe.
All right, stinky work. Let me have one more. While you were talking about something very serious, I took a huge swig of like old stale LaCroix and I just spit it back in the can. I know, I was like, not the right LaCroix.
Not fresh.